It's fantastic to be here with a group of marketers because that's my background. And for us to all get together and talk about the deadlines and the projects and everything that we have going on, we have our people. And that's why summits like this are so important, especially for marketers. Because when we think about everything that we have to deal with today, there's deadlines, there's campaigns, there's customers, there's product information. But do you remember back to our childhood when the world didn't have any of those things? Like when I think back to my childhood, it was all about board games. And board games are one of those things where we get to test out our curiosity and we get to trial our strategy for the very first time. What are some of the board games that all of you played when you were kids? Shout them out. Monopoly. Life? Risk? Sorry? Do you see a theme here? Life, risk. Sorry. Monopoly, you put it all on the line. You know, for me, I grew up on a farm outside a very small town in very rural Nebraska. And I have 3 older brothers who are 6, 8, and 10 years older than me. And it was a little bit like Mary had a little lamb, because everywhere my brothers went, I was sure to go. And even to this day, my middle brother still calls me his shadow. And so it was the kind of thing, like if my older brothers were going down to the creek to catch tadpoles, I was going down to the creek to catch tadpoles with them. If they were climbing to the top of the cottonwood tree, I was climbing to the top of the cottonwood tree with them. If they were swinging from the windmill, much to my mother's dismay, I was swinging from the windmill right there along with them. And it was one of those things that I think I kind of felt like I had to earn their respect. And I felt that if I could just do everything that they did, then they would see me as one of their peers. And then maybe just one day, instead of me always inviting myself along, they would extend me the invitation. And I would have found my place. You know, like when they go to the mall, maybe they'd ask their little sister to come with them. Or if they went on a date to the drive-in, nothing better than having your little sister in the back seat when you're a teenage boy. So that was my whole strategy. Like, how do I establish myself as their peer? So for our family, our game was Monopoly. And I remember it was one of those cold Midwest winter nights. And if you grew up in the Midwest or northern states, Minnesota, North Dakota, you remember that sound of a snowstorm hitting the house. And it's just a whoop, and the house shakes. And you know you're not going anywhere for a couple of days. And so that was the case with me and my 3 older brothers. And I'm sure my mom is like, just get out of my hair, go play a board game. So we pulled out the Monopoly game. And I'm thinking, okay, tonight's my night. Tonight's the night that I'm going to prove to my brothers that I'm as good as they are at this game. Because normally I just get smeared. And their whole ploy was like, just get rid of her so we can play the real game. That wasn't going to happen tonight. So as we go along, some things happen. And I have a brother who's a banker. And somehow he was always pass and go and collecting $200 on every roll of the dice. But I'm 5, and I don't really know the rules. I mean, I can barely read at that point. And my other brother is the realtor, I don't know, the person in charge of all the real estate. And I noticed, like, later, he's sticking all these properties under his side of the board. And I know it's not right, but I can't quite figure out why. But my oldest brother, he had a strategy that he always used every single game that always took me out. He bought the 2 most expensive properties on the board, and he put hotels on them. Do you remember what those properties were? Park Place and Boardwalk. Yep, exactly. So we are in the throes of the game. And it's getting heated. And my oldest brother, he had to buy the 3 houses first, because then you buy the houses, then you pay some money and you upgrade to the hotel. And he turns those houses in and takes that hotel, and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and he reaches to put that hotel on the board. And I'm thinking, I got to do something. Like right now, this is my moment of reckoning. What can I do? How can I take him out? And I do the only thing I can think of in the moment. I put my knee up on the table, and I reach across that board, and I grab the hotel right out of his room, right out of his hand. And then I pop it in my mouth and I ate it. Problem solved. Now, this didn't go over well. I'll just say that. But I did the only thing I could think of in that moment, and that's what kids do, right? Well, it turns out Monopoly is a game that's over 120 years old. And along the way, probably like a lot of your companies, some things have changed in the market. Many of you work for generational companies or companies that are decades, if not a century old, and customer preferences change. Technology comes into the marketplace. For Monopoly, it was a lot of digital games. Their customer preferences are completely different. And so they said, well, let's do a survey. So they talked to over 2,000 of their customers. And they asked them about how they played the game, what they liked about the game. And they came across a very interesting statistic. 51% of all Monopoly games end in a fight. And I'm thinking, from my experience, I can understand that. And so Monopoly said, well, we asked our customers what they thought and about their experience, so we really need to do something about it. So Monopoly opened a 1-800 hotline. And you could call in when you got into a fight, and here was staff, and they had the rule books right there, and they would settle the dispute. And I think this one customer expressed it beautifully. Monopoly is essentially doing the Lord's work right here. But they didn't stop right there. They kept asking questions, and they kept asking questions. And as they talked to customers about how they played the game, what games, like why they ended up in a fight, they found another very interesting statistic. 60% of all people who play Monopoly cheat. Right here, guilty. And I won't look at 60% of the people in this room, but what they understood is that this is a really changing dynamic, and it was one that they hadn't even paid attention to, but really it was right in front of them. So they asked themselves, what can we do with these two little bits of information? Games that end in fights, 60% of people cheat. They said, we have an amazing opportunity to differentiate ourselves in the market to help our product stand out in a way that's completely different. Because they launched the Cheaters Edition of Monopoly. In the entire history of the game, this is the most successful product launch that has ever been done. So the whole idea of the Cheaters Edition of Monopoly is to see how much you can cheat and get away with. Now, Monopoly, the people at Monopoly already knew some basic ways to cheat, but what they drew out of asking customers, those 2,000 customers, questions about why do you get into a fight and how do you cheat, gave them everything that they needed to do to launch a product that was the most successful in their history. So what the game was, it would include cards that gave people new ways to cheat. And then it said, if you get away with it, this is your extra bonus thing, but if you get caught, here's your penalty. And they really drove it home, because if you got caught cheating in the Cheaters Edition of Monopoly, you were literally handcuffed to the board. You didn't pass go. You didn't collect $200. Now, for Monopoly, a lot of what they want is a lot of what all of us want. We want to be more competitive in a highly changing industry that's being flooded with technology, with changing customer expectations. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, I see a lot of heads nodding. It's also very important because Monopoly didn't want to completely disrupt their entire business model. They weren't looking at that. They didn't want to do away with all of the products that they were already selling and scrap them and start with something completely new, because that's not realistic as a business. But they knew that the tides of change were never going to go away. Accenture did a study, and they found that 88% of executives expect the pace of change to continue. But the interesting thing is, they don't believe that their employees are going to be able to keep up with it. Now, if you think about all that has changed in just the last 5 years, we've had a global pandemic, we had a ship turn sideways in the Suez Canal that disrupted the entire supply chain globally. We've had Gen Z enter the workplace, and they care more about purpose than they do about profit. We've had this little thing called AI come in. We've had work from the office, work from home, hybrid work. Now, Where are people working these days? Everything continues to change. So it's not, are we going to change? It's what's going to change, how fast can an organization keep up with it? Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I am super relieved that I am not an executive or a CEO and I'm not in that hot seat. Here's how it affects every single person in this room, is that 83% of marketing leaders are more focused on ROI, on proving your worth than ever before. This has increased from 68% in 2020. In 5 years, it's grown this much. And as marketers, yes, we absolutely have to prove our value, but what metrics are we measuring? And what's the story that we tell with those metrics? And what we don't realize is that what we measure is a direct reflection of what we ask and how we position ourselves and the credibility that we have in our organizations. And with value perception comes budget, and it also comes with more responsibility and impact and influence as a marketer. These are important things for us to remember. So if you ever think, why am I stuck doing all of this like tactical stuff? There's so much more strategy that we need to be putting behind this. This is what we need to think about. What are you reporting on for metrics, and how does that tie to the pressures of your executive team? Now, for Monopoly, what they wanted to do is that they wanted to be more competitive. They wanted to grow their revenue. They wanted to be able to keep up with change. And they knew they had to be more creative with how they did it. They knew they had to think more innovatively. But they also understood that in order for them to get to that more creative thinking and that more innovative thinking, they needed one thing. They needed curiosity. Because curiosity is what drives creativity and innovative thinking. But how do we get more curious? I mean, we're all born curious as kids, but how do we transition that from our childhood into something that matters as an adult? And the way that we do that, the way we apply our curiosity, is completely based on the questions we ask. The questions we ask can take us in any direction that we want to go. The issue is that right now we're asking questions, absolutely, but they're not strategic questions that take us in a more strategic, innovative, and creative direction. That's what the curiosity compass is for. So if you think about a traditional compass with north, south, east, west, it's set up in exactly the same kind of layout. So in the west position, we have tactical questions. These are questions that are all about like the details of how do we get things done. But on the opposite side of that, we have exploratory questions. These are all about possibilities and what could be that we don't have easy answers to. In the south position, we have logistical questions. It's about implementation and resources. And opposite of that, we have strategic questions, like where do we want to go as a team, as an organization, as an industry? When we look at what kind of questions come out of each of these quadrants, this is what it looks like. So if we look at tactical logistical questions, how do we deliver all of the marketing kits to where they need to go by what date, and what do they need to include? Very tactical, very logistical. If we look at a question that's tactical and strategic questions, like what kind of questions are our customers asking that we're not answering? And a lot of times this comes because internally, the focus is on the product that we sell, but not the problem that we're solving. And if we look at the questions that are exploratory and logistical, it's something like, how do we deliver more qualified leads next quarter? It's how do we grow the business, but how do we logistically get there? The questions we rarely, if ever, ask are those that are in the strategic and exploratory quadrant. And the reason that we don't ask those questions is because there's not an easy answer. You can't Google the answer. You can't ask ChatGPT and get an easy answer. And what we do as humans is we default to where we're comfortable. And where we are comfortable are questions that are tactical and logistical. What's the due date? What's the budget? What's involved? What do we want to do? Very tactical, concrete, black and white questions. But the damage that this does to every single one of us as marketers is that it tells everybody else, we do the strategy and we set the roadmap over here, and then we tell marketing what to do. And has anybody in here ever had a request from something that you're thinking, that is so wrong? That's ridiculous. What are they thinking? And the reason is because 60 to 70% of all sales and marketing content that is created is never used. Let me say that again. 60 to 70% of all marketing and sales content is never, ever used. You want to increase your budget? Do work that gets used. And it sounds like an well, no kidding kind of thing. But the reason we get stuck in this is because we get stuck in asking the tactical, logistical questions. You will never be perceived as a strategic resource that helps influence the direction of the business when you ask tactical and logistical questions. So what does it look like? Like, how do we shift something, a conversation, from a tactical and logistical question to one that is strategic and exploratory? Let's take the example of the flyer. How many people have ever had a request of, we need this flyer for this customer, for this event, for this reason, and I need it now, and it's super important, really urgent, like the world hinges on this flyer. How is the world still spinning because we don't have the flyer? And so we say, okay, what needs to be on the flyer? When's it due? How many do you need? How do you want it delivered? What did we automatically default to? Tactical and logistical questions. What do you think the chances are they use that flyer? 0. Want to increase your budget? Do work that matters. The way we shift that flyer conversation into one that is strategic and exploratory is you ask one question. What are we trying to accomplish? Or why are we doing this? Because all of a sudden that person requesting it goes, oh, well, I never really thought of that. Flyers are just what we do. And so that's why we get caught up in these conversations about, well, that's just how we do things around here. And it defaults to logistical and tactical conversations. How do we get out of this vicious cycle? We start to apply our curiosity. And that's the applied curiosity method. It's 3 steps. Number 1, sit with the problem. Number 2, go down that rabbit hole. Number 3, swap hats. This is what we're going to dive into, all right? Number 1, sit with the problem. We have this absolutely diabolical urge to answer a question. We have to solve the problem. We've got to know. And I think especially as marketers, it's ingrained in us because in this industry, we work with a lot of very smart, very technically driven people. And when they ask you a question, they want a specific answer, right? Yes. Do they ever say, let's just sit around and chat about this for a little while, see where it goes? No. They ask a question, they want an answer. And so we have this diabolical urge that we have to answer. But there is such a power that comes from when we just sit with the question and really look at it from 360 degrees. Remember that 60 to 70% of content that's never used? We need to sit with the questions that we're being asked. So how do we do that? This is Rob Penrose. And I came across Rob in his hotel when my family was planning a trip. And I normally look for, reasonably priced places to stay, sometimes hostels. And the first thing I do is that I read reviews. And I came across Rob's hostel, and these were some of the reviews. Whatever you do, don't go there. All it is a big blaring H out there. It's horrible to stay at. And it was 216 horrible reviews after another. But the one that really synced it was this one. Don't stay there unless you want to get robbed. But by now I'm curious, like, how can you have that many horrible reviews and still be in business? So I looked into Hans Brinker Budget Hotel, and they absolutely did have a reputation problem. But Rob is not one to jump to answers quickly. Now, if you think if we have that kind of horrible reviews about our company and our products, you better believe we'd be pedaling fast and try and fix those and maybe respond to them and do a thing and make people like us and see us in a better light. But Rob didn't do that. Rob sat with the question. And he said, what is it that we're really trying to accomplish here? One, he knew his customer base. It wasn't people who wanted to come stay at an amazing intercontinental hotel. They weren't wanting high-end stays. They were backpackers. However, even backpackers have standards. And some of the comments were things like, I got a room, but there wasn't even a bed. The toilets don't flush. There's no lock. I can't protect my backpack and my little worldly possessions. Like, everything over and over was really harsh. And Rob said, but maybe we can play that to our advantage. He thought about it quite a while. And so they launched a campaign to deal with the reputation of Hans Brinker Hotel. And this is what it looked like. The ads, now we have a bed in every room. Like, you don't have to worry that you're just going to get some straw in the corner. Now we have free flushing toilets. We have a free key with your room. Now, more noise than you ever imagined. And maybe this one now, even less service. So if customer expectations weren't being met, maybe what we needed to do, he thought, you just lower their expectations. Doesn't sound so hard, but he came to that because he thought of the problem. Now, when we go to stay at a place, even as a backpacker, we stay at a hostel or a hotel because we want to get rested and refreshed, right? Well, Rob thought differently. And he said, if that's what people expect, and we're trying really hard to lower their expectations, let's tell them what it's like when they check in versus when they check out. This is what it's like when you check in and then you check out. Check in, check out. And it was really clear. And what Rob understood is that their audience believed that all advertising is just lies to start with. So instead of lying and trying to imply, oh, we're so much better than that, like ignore all those 216 liars. What do they know? Let's really, really lean into this. And so now when people get there, they're kind of disappointed because they're going, wasn't really as bad as I thought. I mean, even me, I like a good quality control, cleanliness checklist. And I'm thinking, I kind of want to, stop by if I'm in the neighborhood, see if it really is as bad as it seems. Rob sat with the problem. And he created a dynamic where they are now booked out more than 6 months ahead of time for a crappy, under-delivering hostel. He sat with the problem. So how do we sit with the problem? First thing that we do is that we resist that urge to look for an answer. Let's really understand what problem are we trying to solve to start with. The second thing that we do is that we look at this challenge from every possible angle. Like in Rob's case, a person would typically say, we have to improve our customer experience scores. But instead, he looked at it from every angle and he leaned into doing the opposite of that. The third thing we need to do is that we need to spend time just asking questions instead of making assumptions. One of our greatest detriments into being creative and curious is our own experience. And we make assumptions about what is true. But when we can sit with the question, then we have an opportunity to see it in a whole new light. So we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to practice this first skill of sitting with the questions. So I want you at each of your table, divide into 2 groups. And here's your question. Your dog has a double life. By day, he's an amazing, playful, fun golden retriever. But by night, who knows what shady things your dog gets into. So your assignment as a table is you're going to take a couple of questions, or take a couple of minutes, and you are purely going to ask each other questions to uncover this mystery. If you've ever watched a Sherlock Holmes movie, you understand he's asking questions. Because when we ask questions, it also raises our ability to observe and our awareness of what's going on. Now, one warning, resist the urge to answer the question. Okay, we'll take about 3 minutes. And I want you to solve the problem of your golden retriever's double life. All right, bring it back in. How did it feel to just sit with a question, only ask questions and not answer them? How did that feel? Uncomfortable. Did you say uncomfortable? What's the urge that you had? To get to the answer. Exactly. This is an amazing skill, but here's the thing. A skill takes practice. And you realize how conditioned and how habitual we are in our thinking. Ask a question, answer it. And when you do that, you take this world of possibilities and slam that door shut because you don't truly understand the situation, the question, the request of what's going on. Now, there's an interesting story about the Toyota Motor Company, and they were having these issues on the factory floor. And they found that the workers were coming to the shift leaders, and they were saying that we had a problem. And they realized that if they asked the question why, on average, 5 times, they would get to the root cause of what the problem was. This exercise of the 5 whys shifts you from that tactical, logistical quadrant to the exploratory and strategic quadrant. So if somebody comes to you and says, I need this flyer, and you ask, what are we trying to accomplish here? Like, why do we need to do this? They answer that question, why? And you say, well, why is that important? They answer, why is that important? Then you get to the root cause, and you probably figure out, like, the flyer is the worst thing in the world you could do for what you're trying to accomplish. So if you want to download a toolkit that teaches you the exercise of the 5 whys, it gives you a summary of the curiosity compass, and it gives you a list of 20 questions for each of these 3 steps: sitting with the problem, going down the rabbit hole, and swapping hats. You can scan this. You'll also get a link to download this deck if you want that. And if you don't take it now, it's carlajohnson.co/NAED. You can go there at any time and download it. All right, step number 1, sit with the problem. We're already a little itchy and uncomfortable, right? Thinking a little different, getting curious. Step number 2, dive down the rabbit hole. Research tells us that we don't get to truly creative and innovative ideas until we've gone through the first 200 ideas. Now, I'm not ridiculous enough to think that everybody in this room needs to go through 200 ideas before they get to a good idea, because who has that kind of time? Especially under deadline, especially under pressure. But here's where going down the rabbit hole works so well for you, is that right now, when we need an idea, we tend to stop when we get to maybe 8, maybe 10 kind of good ideas. Maybe there's 1 or 2 we feel really good about, and we have a few extra. But if you look at that difference between 8 to 10 ideas and 200 ideas, the reason we need to go for quantity is that quantity brings us quality. We know in a sales funnel, you can't just say we need 10 new sales, so let's talk to 10 people because everything falls directly straight down. No, it's a funnel for a reason. It's the same thing with ideas. And what your brain does is it goes through a process, and it says, what did we do last time? What did people say yes to? What is safe? That's what we're going to start with. And you miss all this beautiful opportunity for thinking differently. So to go down the rabbit hole, I think about, like, when I think about curiosity, I had a grandma who was really curious. And as a little girl, she was super fun to go spend summers with. But the one thing she was not curious about was food. My grandma found a box of grape nuts and never ate anything else for breakfast the rest of her life. And if some of you haven't eaten grape nuts before, it's like eating little bits of gravel, like bigger than sand, but smaller than rocks. And somehow that's supposed to be healthy for you. Well, in Canada, they have the equivalent with the cereal, and it was called Shreddies. So if you've ever eaten Wheat Chex, Shreddies is like Wheat Chex, but with less flavor. But it was this beloved brand, and it was launched in 1935. And so as kids grew up in Canada, the memory they have is going to their grandparents' house, and the box of Shreddies would come out on the breakfast table. And so it was a well-recognized brand. But as you can imagine, between 1935 and today, a lot has changed in the breakfast industry. I mean, even just what's gone on in the world, world wars. We've had the 80s, we've had the 90s, we've had technology, and we have all of these things in the food industry, such as, well, Captain Crunch for one, Fruit Loops, and you take a Captain Crunch and a Fruit Loop and compare it to a tasteless Wheat Chex. But then we also have protein drinks, and we have breakfast bars, and we have fast food, all of these things. And so what Shreddies experienced was an incredible decline in their demand from customers. And they realized if we don't do something, we're going to go out of business. And it's not just, we're going to go out of business and that would be sad. Shreddies employed tens of thousands of people across Canada. If they went out of business, it was an economic hit to the country. So they said, this is a problem we have to solve. So they got everybody together in the marketing team, some of the people in the finance, and of course legal, and they said, we got to figure out a strategy and what to do. So they're going through and they're saying okay, here's what the data says, and this is what we've measured, and this is what our customer experience scores say, and what do we do? Somebody in that room asked a question. It wasn't an executive. It wasn't a data analyst. It wasn't an expert. It was a 26-year-old intern named Hunter Somerville. And while they had all of the Shreddies cereal out on the table so they could emotionally connect to their product, Hunter picked up one of those squares and he looks at it and he says, what if we call it a diamond? And his boss said, go with it, run, go. We need anything we can do. Hunter, he was an intern, but he understood, you can't just redo everything off a little whim of a square to a diamond. So he said, we should probably do some focus groups. So they did a focus group to get customers' opinion of what it looks like. Up, sound. I'm going to go back here so you can hear the first part. Has anybody ever been scolded at a meeting for going down the rabbit hole? Yeah, it's okay. I saw hands immediately come up. Isn't that so interesting? The thing that helps us the most is the thing we get scolded about, going down the rabbit hole. Do you do that with your kids? I know I did. I've got 3 kids. I know I've done it with my kids. Come on, bring it back. Focus, especially when they're doing homework or something like that. Come on, bring it back in. And then I tell them to focus. I don't let them sit with a question. All of this is so ingrained in all of us. Do you see this show up in your work? Do you see how fast you try and answer questions when you're in a meeting at work? How do you think that affects the work that you do? Do you have a sense? Anybody? Less creative. Narrower focus. Very robotic. So we know what needs to be done. And I mean, there's a time for efficiency and productivity. Absolutely. But when that's all we focus on, literally, when you narrow your vision, you narrow your creativity. And so if you hear people talk about productivity and how we manage our energy throughout the day, a lot of times they say, stand up, look to the horizon, because when you do that, you've taken your visual focus from narrow to broader, and all of a sudden, this works for creativity too. you see more opportunities. Are we good? The screen up here is blank still. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is the focus group that they did. Oh, still no sound. Are you guys like teasing me? I could probably like just lip sync it. Should I act it out? Maybe I could mime it. Yeah.
So I think a lot of marketers are more creative types most of the time. And our executives are those accounting minds, those
Left brain thinkers. Left brain.
That's, I think, some of when they're demanding answers, they don't want to hear more creative answers.
I think the way that you deal with that, because even like accounting people, they're looking for the specifics because they need to report on something toward the business objective of the company. So oftentimes, they don't know a lot about marketing, but they listened to a podcast or they read a Harvard Business Review article, which told them to fill in the blank. And so they take that and they come to us and ask us to report accordingly. So I think one of the most valuable things that we can do in conversations that we can have with people, finance people, oftentimes attorneys, very left brain thinking people, is to go back to like, let's remember what we're trying to accomplish here. So if you think about all of this in the context of storytelling, when we pick up a book that we haven't read for a little while, the first thing that we do is we remind ourselves, one, what story are we in? Who are the characters? And exactly where in that storyline am I? And then we get into the story and it makes sense, right? So that's one of the reasons that for us as marketers, we have to ask different questions because we live in the world of marketing. Like this is what we do every day. For a finance person, it's a one-off. Like they come to us, they come to HR, they come to everybody else in the organization. So they want information that helps them fill in their spreadsheet so they can accomplish what they want to do. So that exploratory, strategic question of what are we wanting to accomplish here is one that resets everybody's expectations. And sometimes instead of us, asking the question, we can lead the conversation by saying, okay, the goals and objectives and metrics of the organization for this year are. So you take it from a tactical, what numbers can you give the finance person to? Let's remember everything that we're trying to accomplish as an organization. And then you bring it down into understanding what metrics do they actually need in order to report to show that marketing is contributing in that way. And when you look at the download for the exercise of the 5 whys, it walks through. That is a beautiful exercise when you're having conversations with somebody who wants specific metrics for whatever reason, maybe you don't know them. Does that help? Good. Okay. Third time's a charm. Here we go. I'm waiting. Now my clicker doesn't work. Okay, well, I'll move on. So what happened? Here's what happens is that he brings in a group of people, and he has 2 boxes in front of him. In one of them is a box of traditional shreddies. In the other one, the diamond shreddies. And he has them do a taste test. And lo and behold, if they don't say that diamond shreddy tastes just a little nuttier, and it has just a little more punch, a little
something
here we go.
So they're introducing new diamond shreddies.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
I'll go. Trying to get it to match up. That's okay. Oh, but my clicker doesn't work. Oh, holy smokes. Okay, so here's what happens. So they go into the focus group and they ask people, and one woman has the awareness to say, well, isn't this the same thing? Like a square and a diamond, isn't it just turned? And the focus group leader says, well, it's kind of like a 6 and a 9. Like they're the same, but if you turn them, they're completely different, right? And true, M and a W. And she's like, yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. And so it goes on, and people are starting to go, yeah, these diamond shreddies, they're really amazing. And so they get enough proof points. It's right, there we go. They get enough proof points that they say, we are going to ask the entire country of Canada, what do you prefer, the square or the new diamondy or shreddies? And the diamond shreddies outvoted them by 50,000 votes. The public had spoken. They preferred the new diamond shreddies. And so now they're thinking, okay, we have got something, so let's launch it. They said the new and exciting diamond shreddies versus the old boring square ones. Then they launched the product.
Shreddies are supposed to be square.
Have any of these diamond shapes gone out?
New Diamond Shreddy cereal. Same 100% whole grain wheat in a delicious diamond shape.
And they said, oh man, we have got something here. Sales began to hit bottom and they took off because people love them, their diamond shreddies. It was new, it was exciting, it was different. So then they didn't want people to have to choose. We're fickle. We want it both. We want our cake and we want to eat it too. We want our squares and we want our diamonds. So they sold the diamond pack. Went off like crazy. Then they said, they kept going down the rabbit hole. What else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? And Hunter, man, he's like a rabbit like you have never seen. And Hunter came up with an idea. He said, what if we add value to the actual mistakes that we have? Because you see, about every 6 million sheets of Shreddy cereal, 2 or 3 of them stick together. And he said, what if we use that as an opportunity and we do a contest? And we say to people, post pictures of your double diamond Shreddies, and you could win prizes. And of course, some of the prizes were a year's worth of Shreddies, but others were tell us your wish. And if you get a double diamond Shreddies and you post it on Instagram or social media, your wish might come true. They have now turned a breakfast cereal into something that single dudes post pictures of before they go to work. Parents are posting pictures of their kids before they go to school. Dog lovers are posting pictures of their double diamond Shreddies with their pugs. They have turned an obsolete product that nobody cares about, that the business was going to go under and tens of thousands of people were going to lose their job and affect the entire economy of a country. By going down the rabbit hole, they turned it into a lottery ticket. A lottery ticket. Just in case you haven't caught on, it's the same thing. Like for anybody who wasn't paying attention, it's the same product. They did not have to do any R&D. They didn't have to do any government approval. They didn't have to do anything different from accounting and ledgers and all of that. All they had to do is what Hunter said. They just had to go with something that was so absurd that people couldn't believe it, and they believed it. They just kept pushing and pushing and pushing about what was possible. Now, I know none of you sell cereal, but there are things that you can do to go down the rabbit hole. Number one is don't stop with the good enough idea. Instead, keep asking like, and then what? And then what? And then what? You know that 8 to 10 ideas? You can get a lot closer to 200. You still don't have to get to 200, but you can get a lot closer further down the line with a lot more creative ideas when you go down the rabbit hole. Now, the other thing is that you go back to some of these early stage ideas that you think are pretty good, like you're feeling solid about them, and then just push, push, push. What's so absurd about it that it would never work? Because it just might work. That's what comedy is. The Seinfeld show is a show about nothing. They just kept pushing, a show about absolutely nothing. How far can you push it down the rabbit hole? Now, normally we would do an exercise, but I'm going to skip over it because I want to respect your time and not go over here. Here was your assignment if you want to take a picture of it. You can try it maybe with your team back at the office. But the the thing that I want you to continue to practice is to ask the question, and then what? And then what? And then what happens? That's a great way to help you sit with the question. And then what? All right, that's number 2, is to go down the rabbit hole. Number 3 is to swap hats. Back to that whole idea of one of our greatest strengths and detriments is our experience. Because we know. And when we know, we have a narrower field of vision about what's possible. So if you think about kids are great at swapping hats. Like, I look at every 5-year-old boy and holy smokes, they are Batman. When I was little, back on the farm, my mom would get these big boxes of groceries from we called it the warehouse market, where you'd go and it's kind of like Costco back in the day. And we get the boxes and we take a paper plate and the thing you poke through and then split out the side, and then the plate would turn, and it was a race car. We draw pedals on it, we draw wheels on the outside, and like all of a sudden I was a race car driver. But the thing I really wanted to be when I was a kid is I wanted to grow up and be a doctor. And one Christmas, my mom gave me a little plastic doctor's kit. So the funny thing about when you're a doctor, everybody's a patient. So here's 5-year-old me. I didn't have one of those cool white coats. I probably wore one of my older brother's white shirts, and I had a little stethoscope, and I had this little plastic bag. Everybody was sick, including the cats and the dogs and probably a couple of chickens. And I would give them medicine. It might have been 3 Skittles and 2 Smarties and call me in the morning, but I took care of everybody. And I thought like a doctor, and that's how I went through the world. But all of this beauty and imagination of make-believe turned into a nightmare when I grew up. Because before every one of my kids turned 3, I had to hand them over to a pediatric surgeon. And when you do that, all of a sudden you pay attention. And I said to that doctor, I want you to pay attention to every beep and every handoff and every connection. Because these are my babies. What people don't know is that pediatric surgery is one of the highest risk processes you can do. And on top of that, pediatric heart surgery. Luckily, my kids didn't need heart surgery, but this is what Dr. Martin Elliott from the Great Ormond Street Hospital dealt with every single day. Pediatric heart surgeon. They had a 30% error rate in the process from when surgery was done and they had to move the patient down the hall to the ICU. 30%. 1 out of every 3 decisions was wrong. That is life and death. We have pressure. We have deadlines. Nobody dies if we don't make the right decision. They did with Dr. Elliott. He had tried lean. He had tried Six Sigma. He had tried process mapping. 30%. 30%. 30%. Not only is he risking the lives of his patients, but it's a research hospital. So as a research hospital, if you have an error rate like that, you can't attract the top researchers. And if you're a hospital with that kind of error rate and you can't attract top researchers, you can't attract top donors. And you go downhill fast. But most of all, Dr. Elliott would have to look at the families who were waiting for their babies to come out of surgery. This is a problem that he had to solve. And it was one Wednesday morning, and he walks into the staff lounge. He had already done 2 surgeries, and it's 10 a.m. And he sits down on the couch, and he's, the pressure. And he happened to look up, and right there on the wall in front of him in the staff lounge was a TV screen. And in that instant, he watched as a Ferrari Formula One car pulled into the pit stop, and in 6.8 seconds, that car was out. Tires changed, windshield cleaned, fueled up and ready to go. And he said that process is just as life and death as the things that my team and I do in the surgery room. And he said, now I have an idea. So he called the head of the pit stop crew at Ferrari 1, and he invited them to come into the hospital and work with his team. He said, this is an error rate we have to solve. And so what they learned by working with the Formula One pit stop team is two critical things. One is that in a Formula One pit stop team, new people are encouraged to ask questions, to sit with the problem, to go down the rabbit hole. But in a surgery team, nobody questions that surgeon. The second thing that they found out is that every single detail of every single process is perfected in a Formula One pit stop. But in the surgery center, as soon as that surgeon walked out, it was total and complete chaos and nobody was in charge. 30% error rate. But the next thing that Dr. Elliott did, because he sat with the problem, he went down the rabbit hole, and then he swapped hats. He said, there's this dynamic that happens in the surgery situation where when we're all under chaos, it's like a scrum, it's like a slam dance, it's like a whatever it is. He invited a professional choreographer in, professional dance choreographer in. And he said, I want you to teach me and my team precision movement so we are like a ballet, not a scrum. In 6 months, that 30% error rate dropped to 10. Now, Dr. Elliott says we still, like 0 is our goal. And we are constantly working toward that during this time. But the way he dropped it so far so fast is because he swapped hats. He thought like somebody completely different from his industry. He looked for that naive expert to give him fresh eyes into the work that he was doing. So for us, if we want to swap hats, what we need to think about is pick something completely different, a different job title, a different industry, somebody, a Marvel character, somebody you've always wanted to be, and think like that. Like continually ask yourself, what would Captain America do in this situation? What would Taylor Swift do in this situation? And think like them. And we see new opportunities that are right in front of us. And the third thing is to keep swapping hats. Like Dr. Elliott, amazing response from the Ferrari team, but he didn't stop there. He kept looking for other people he could think like and look at his world like that would help him make an incredible impact. So we're going to take about 1 minute right now. I want you to turn to somebody right next to you, and I want you to tell them, we're just going to do one person. Who is one person that you want to think like as you go through the rest of this conference, today and tomorrow? It can be somebody make-believe. It could be a real-life person. Here's a couple of examples. Sometimes I put a lion tamer up here. Well, who is somebody completely different that you want to try and look at the world through? All right, any quick shares? Anybody want to say who they're going to swap hats with? Shout it out real loud if you want to share. Who? Tom Brady. Here we go. Listen up. Listen up. Bring it all back in. Okay, Tom Brady because the TB12 method?
Yes.
Okay.
What he lives by to be as successful and as exceptional a quarterback in person as he is. It's just more than being a quarterback. It's living your life daily and all of these, being disciplined to live a certain
Discipline, consistency, direction, focus, purpose in everything that he does. Tom Brady. If I had a football, I'd throw it to you. Yes, but think about this. Anybody else want to share a quick swap? Over here. Jane Goodall. Why Jane Goodall? There you go. We can change how we show up in the world like that by swapping hats with somebody. It's so powerful. The applied curiosity method. 3 steps for you to reinvigorate your childhood curiosity and become creative and understand how to be curious and apply it every single day. Now, when I think back to that night, and I put my knee up on the table, and I looked at my brother right in the eyes, and then I grabbed his hotel and I ate it, like, that's just what kids do. Like, kids don't think about consequences. They just think, I have a problem, how do I solve it? We're all born inherently curious, and we're all born creative, and we're all born with a little bit of this wild belief that we can change the world. But somewhere along the way, we trade our rabbit holes for the predictability of roadmaps. And we start coloring inside the lines. But people tell us, like, you gotta grow up. You gotta get realistic. You gotta focus. Bring it all in. Focus. And we don't realize it, but that's when we get ourselves anchored in that mindset of tactical and logistical thinking. But what if we could bring all of our childhood curiosity back? What if we could just sit with a question? What if we could dive down that rabbit hole? What if we could swap hats with anybody in the world we wanted to? Man, not only would our campaigns get better, imagine our flyers, what they would look like. You know, we'd build better relationships, we'd have better sales scores. We would start to find possibilities in places that we never imagined. So when we feel stuck, we really can find the joy and the excitement in the work that we do all over again. And we can just strip away all of that stress that makes us freeze up and tense. And instead of looking at one of our coworkers and thinking, why are you so hard to work with? And blurting out something really harsh and grabbing their hotel, maybe swallow it. I can look at you in a whole different light. And I can say, man, you're the person I've been waiting for, because you and we're gonna create that next amazing thing together. And when we all do that, we turn those roadblocks into launch pads. The questions you ask are incredibly powerful. When you take that power of the questions that you ask, you turn caution into curiosity, and you swap this comfort zone for creativity. And that's when you stop settling for the sure thing, and you start believing in big possibilities. The next time you feel stuck, ask another question. Go down that rabbit hole. Swap hats with anybody in the world that you want to be. Because when we do that, that's when all of us have the power to rewrite the rules of the game that we play all together. I'm Carla Johnnson. Thank you.